Hi, I'm Lola Jean. I'm a sex educator, a headmistress of 7 Days of Domination, and the world record holder for volume squirting.
So you do so many things in the sex space. You're a sex educator, you are a headmistress, you have all these different things. So I just want to rewind for a second to when your sexuality journey kind of started to evolve.
There are these two instances in my life that I call like my sexual revolutions, and they were very different, but they were just periods of times where I was going in a very deep exploration. And the first one was just about doing. That was in my early 20s, and it was just about doing different things. But honestly, like it wasn't focused on my pleasure at all. So it was
Oh,
very draining. I didn't have enough safety or things set in place to protect myself. And honestly, like I had a large period of celibacy that followed that because of how draining it was. And in that second sexual revolution, that was in more of like my mid 20s, that was focused on my pleasure and really
mm.
discovering myself. And I had a lot more things to safeguard. And it really started after, gosh, this like one pivotal week. I swear to God that all of my careers took off. I learned that I was capable of squirting. I had my heart broken. Like all this stuff
Whoa.
happened in the same, and I like left my job. There's all these things that happen in the same like couple month period. But it was after I had feelings for someone for the very first time when I was like 26 or 27. And that was also the first time I squirted. And for reasons unrelated to the squirting, it ended. My heart was broken. I didn't have my first relationship that I thought I was going to have. And that's when I was like, I have waited 26 years to find someone I have feelings for. I am not waiting any longer to do some of the sexual shit that I want to do because I'm not going to find someone to do it with. I thought this would be the person. And that's kind of what started that second one. And it also coincided with leaving my job in advertising, starting to waitress and then getting fired from that, and then starting to just do a lot of odd jobs, which was working in a dungeon as a dominatrix because I was starting to dabble in kink and I really liked it. And working for a different sex educator, doing social media and marketing, doing wrestling fetish, like all of these like different things because I was just trying to juggle a bunch of things to make ends meet and to do jobs I didn't hate. And that's just when everything kind of fell into place. Like I never intended to be a sex educator. I never intended to disappoint my parents, but you know, this is where we are, and it's just it's worked out so well, which is where you just can't deny some of the fate that plays into it.
Yeah. I also kind of love that feminist evolution in this was the sex revolution for them, but then I had the better one for me. Okay, so let's get into squirting. Congratulations. So have you achieved this world record twice now? Am I understanding?
Yeah. The first time, and I'm glad I actually did it twice because it was more people are like, "Oh, are you gonna defend it?" And I was like, "Why would I defend it? No one's broken it." But the first time I did it was my very first like large scale event that was sort of by accident, but it was we reached a capacity at 300 people. And now I've been throwing a lot of events. So this last one, like I had a great photographer, I had a good stage and good lighting.
Ooh,
So there's like it was a lot more press friendly. But the first one I set in 2019 and I broke science. I bested science by 350 milliliters of what they said a human could squirt. And then I bested my own record in September of 2022, and I squirted 1,350 milliliters in 25 seconds. So 50% more than what science said is possible.
incredible. What does science say is possible?
900 milliliters.
Wow. Um, so
And like
let's
science says a lot of things that
right.
like I set this because I'm like, my body can disprove what you're saying. You say it's involuntary. No, it's not. You say it happens during orgasm. No, it doesn't. You say it's only via penetration. Nope.
Yeah, well, they don't study us, so. So let's just break it down, make it really simple. What is squirting and what is squirt?
Yes, the $1,000,000 question. So
Right.
squirting is the expulsion of fluid in the vulvovaginal area during a period of potential sexual stimulation or pleasure. Sometimes for some people, it is not that. Now, when I say expulsion, it doesn't mean it has to like eject out of the body. It can fall out of the body, it can gush out of the body, it can dribble. It doesn't matter in what type of force or the quantity of it. Now, for what squirt is jury's out. I think in general, we find that there are some traces of similar properties that there are in urine, but there's also prostate specific antigen and there's like water, minerals, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the deal. I am very good at squirting and I can control it. I'm also very good at peeing and I can control it. I know the difference when I'm
Mhm.
squirting and peeing, and I know how to control when I want to squirt or pee like on a bed, in the
Mhm.
toilet, on a person. Like I do those things, and it's definitely not the same function because I have to really focus on it to control that. Now, they have done some studies recently, and here's what I don't like about it is they're like, oh, well, we put this blue dye in the bladder and what came out was blue. So therefore it must be urine because it came from the bladder. It's like, cool. But you also did studies where you ultrasound people and you made sure they emptied their bladder. And during sexual stimulation, the bladder filled up with liquid, but like that doesn't mean that it's urine. It's the
Right.
bladder's filling up with liquid, but like where is that liquid coming from? Because if it enters the bladder, yeah, it's going to get that blue dye in it, sure. But I can feel it within my body of like it's coming from somewhere. It happens when I'm dehydrated. Like it is a different thing and it smells different. It tastes different. I've done side by side comparisons. What I will say is no matter what, no bodily fluid keeps well. I don't care if we think squirt is the nectar from the gods. If you hold on to that for multiple days, it's fucking gross because it's a bodily fluid. And I know this because I sold my squirt at my event and I forgot to unpack, I guess, the bag the unsold bottles were in until a week later. And that was one of the grossest things I've ever had to do.
Yeah, I have squirted maybe a handful of times, and it's totally different. I feel like that question is so stupid, but I wanna clear it up.
And the thing
So
is no matter what, people are going to be like, it's piss. But here's the thing, the people that say that are not people who squirt every time without
right,
fail.
right. So how did you discover that you could do it? Was it intentional or did you just find like it just happened?
No, I didn't even know what squirt was when I did it. I was not trying to do it. And honestly, like jury's out if I did it before that moment because I only knew I did it because someone told me. They were like,
Oh.
oh, you squirted. Is that something you do? And I was like, I don't know, I guess. And then like the next time, because there wasn't a negative connotation with it, I like there was no denying it. I destroyed this poor man's mattress. But it was just from like run of the mill oral, purely external. So it wasn't from, I guess, what a lot of people when they're trying to squirt do. But I also have my theory of there being two different types of squirters. And the type that I am, which is broad response, is that's just how my body experiences pleasure, which is why I do it so frequently and so often and more so not associated with orgasm.
What's the other type of squirter?
So there's broad response and specific response. And essentially, for broad response, that's someone who usually squirts due to any type of, a certain level of sexual stimulation or pleasure. Whereas a specific response person is someone who usually squirts for a specific type of motion. So, like a G spot stimulation
Mm.
with a finger or from anal stimulation, like there's something specific that you do that will get that person to squirt aside from like they always squirt.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Okay. I think I'm the second type because I could only do it with this certain toy that like is harder than a lot of my other ones. So, and it was like a magical toy in that way. I was like, oh, this is, and then it broke. I have to get a new one. Anyway, I was impressed for that reason that you could do it using only your hand. But I guess that's because of the broad response.
Correct. Yeah. And I can do it 500 different ways. I actually just did like this TV spot or a documentary and they needed me to squirt at the end. And I think they just thought it was going to be a lot more difficult. And I was telling them, usually people are just shocked at how fast I can do it because I'm an athlete at this point and it's more I just have like a mindful of a connection and once that's there and I'm like prepared, I can do it in a few seconds. But I was telling them I'm like I can do this as many times as you want. You want a bunch of angles? And then I literally had the camera person telling me when, like I'm pouring them lemonade.
Amazing. Do you have tips for people who wanna do it? It seems like it comes very naturally for you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole course on it. It's the quick and dirty squirting course, and the big difference with my teachings and actually why I kind of started doing sex ed or teaching about squirting is that I didn't feel like there was enough from the squirter's perspective. It was all about making someone squirt. So with my course, like there is no timeline, like this is going to happen for you when it happens to you, and for everyone it's going to happen in a completely different way. I have a couple of different like motions and movements, but it's really about recognizing when you have a certain level of engorgement and then figuring out how to get it out of your body.
Mm,
So a lot of it's experimenting with your pelvic floor muscles, and that doesn't mean do a bunch of Kegels forever because that's also not good for you. So it's all the different movements of the pelvic floor contracting, lengthening, and relaxing as well. And those are things that are both going to change your pleasure. So you can change anything that you're doing. You're having partnered sex, you're masturbating. Like those are things where you have a lot more control over your pleasure instead of being a passive recipient, and also figuring out how to get this out of your body in whichever way that that is for you. And I think for a lot of people who have vulvas, they really enjoy this a lot more than a lot of like cis male oriented squirting courses, because it takes the pressure off of them, and it also is explaining here's what's going on in your body, here's what you may feel, here's what this means, here's what this doesn't mean. And also do it by yourself, because if your body does anything embarrassing, you don't have to tell anybody. And
right.
it's easier then because we don't have the pressure of another person. And if we're going to please them or satisfy them, if they're going to be upset with us and all of these different things. But in general, like our bodies are really cool. They Mine continues to amaze me like on the daily. So if we just let it go on autopilot, like we can discover some pretty cool things.
Totally. Well, is there anything else? I mean, we covered a lot of ground and you'll probably have to come back again sometime, but is there anything else that I should know?
No, I mean everything, whether it's 7 Days of Domination, that's 7daysofdomination.com. Everything of all of my courses or upcoming events is lolajean.com or courses.lolajean.com. And I just also launched a forum. Specifically, there's one for people who squirt, and I want that to be free of people questioning the validity of our bodies or the contents of squirt, so that we can have a place to gather and discuss. Because when I did a bunch of interviews with people, that just felt like what was missing. And also a board for masturbation, one for people with penises, one for people with vulvas, to Skillshare, to ask questions. I have a forthcoming guided audio masturbation, one for people with vulvas, one for people with penises. There's currently a
Oh.
free one for people with vulvas on Spotify and iTunes and all of that, but I'm updating them as soon as I move and get settled and can do that. So I have the forum boards for people to be able to converse on that too.
And what are your social handles?
Everything is lolajean.com with the DOT spelled out. So you also can't forget my website that way.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.